For the past few years, I've been using a combination of a trinocular microscope at first, and I reviewed this back in Voltlog 282, and then I continued with a few more videos on how to buy different C-mount adapters for the camera to get it in focus, another video on how to parafocal the microscope, meaning to have both the eyepieces and the camera port in focus at the same time. As I was saying, I use the combination of this trinocular microscope and the newer digital microscope from Andon Star. The model number is AD409, and it is a 10-inch model, which I reviewed in Voltlog 434, and I'll explain just a bit later why I use a combination of both. But recently, KAISI, which is the official distributor of the recently reviewed Sugon hot air station and other great tools, asked me if I would like to take a look at their optical microscope, and I said yes. So for the purpose of this review, they sent the microscope in for free. It came nicely packed in this thick cardboard box delivered from China. So should you decide to order one after watching my review, there will be a link to their website in the description below. The model number of this unit is TX-350E, and it comes with a 0.7 to 50x zoom capability with 100 millimeters of working distance. It has a third camera port, which makes it a trinocular microscope, but it does not come with a camera included. So should you decide to get a separate camera, you might have to deal with a ring adapter and the focus issues, which I had on my other microscope, but we'll take a look at that in a moment. The interesting thing that I have not seen before is that this model also has a built-in fume extractor, which might do the trick for the occasional hobby soldering job. We'll have to test that as well later in the video. Before I go any further with this review, let me introduce the sponsor of this video, PCBWay.com, a professional PCB manufacturer with fast turnaround times and excellent build quality. But not only that, you can also get your entire product manufactured with PCBWay because they offer services like PCB assembly, enclosure manufacturing, parts sourcing, so give them a try on your next order. There are a few different parts that you'll need to put together, but I didn't even need to look at the user manual to do it. Everything felt natural given that I have owned a microscope before. And just one minor detail that you need to be aware of: if you plan to install the optical protection lens, which is highly recommended to prevent soldering fumes from entering and depositing on the internal optics, it is recommended to screw that in for protection. Then you'll have to switch to the long grab screws, which are included separately in the package, and this is needed for the ring light attachment, which will sit on the lens cover. Otherwise the default screws are just too short. Inside the package you also get the camera adapter, which we will test later with my Haier existing camera to see if we can get it in focus. To power this small exhaust fan plus the ring light, you get this custom USB cable. Having USB as the power source is very nice and convenient. And there is also one of these plastic covers to keep dust away from the microscope when not in use. With the ring light installed, I'm getting roughly 80 millimeters of height or working distance between the base and the ring light, and I've established this by trying to get it in focus. I wouldn't say it's great, but it's certainly usable. You can certainly solder under this distance. And by comparing with my old microscope, on that one I was getting about 190 millimeters of working distance, which is much better. But this one has a more compact stand, does not extend outside its metal base. It's lighter and cheaper as well, while still maintaining good build quality, so it does have some advantages. While having the maximum working distance possible, with the optics still in focus, that is roughly 80 millimeters, and the lowest zoom level at 0.7x, the working visible area is just over 30 millimeters in diameter. And it's really difficult to capture this as my phone is desperately switching between its cameras, but I'll try to include some sample footage, and the image is generally very clear through the eyepiece once you adjust the focus correctly. There is a small brightness adjustment knob on the ring light, and that is useful because some PCBs reflect a lot of light while others less, so you'll have to play around with that while doing your microscope inspection work. The small exhaust fan is constantly running if plugged in. There is no speed adjustment or even an on-off button, so you'll have to unplug it if you don't use it because it just makes noise. It is effective at sucking the fumes produced right under your work area, but since it does not have any filter, it will only be good for, the occasional 1 or 2 minute soldering job. Otherwise, your room will just fill up with the smelly solder fumes. But you have to see the potential of this with something like a 3D printed adapter. It can be hooked up directly to a fume extractor or filtration system, which is nice. It reduces the clutter on your workspace. The eyepiece is generally okay, easy to adjust. Even if you need some kind of eye correction, you have that adjustment. The soft rubber thingies, guards are okay, but nothing to write home about. I mean, the light will still shine past these guards. They're not ideal, but they're soft. And you get the usual adjustment for pupillary distance, which works as expected. To test the camera port, I used the higher camera from Voltlog 292. I installed it using the KAISI provided adapter piece, but I just removed one of the elements, which allowed me to drop the camera lower to the optics, which gave me a larger viewing area on the camera port. Here you can see the HDMI output on this monitor, but if we zoom in through the eyepiece, we notice it is much smaller on the camera port when compared to the eyepiece. Now, this is a typical issue with microscopes in this price range, and the thing to appreciate here is that they do give you a good camera mount, which allows for adjustments of the camera focus without the need for additional ring adapters. So thumbs up for that, because it was a real headache with my previous trinocular microscope, which did not include the proper adapter. And if you're looking for information on how to parfocal your microscope, meaning to have both the third camera port and the two eyepieces in focus at the same time, take a look at Voltlog 297, where I describe that procedure. It will never be perfectly parfocal for a microscope in this price range, but you'll get pretty close to that. Now, if you ask me if you should order yourself one of these, I'm probably the wrong person to ask, because everyone has their own working style, their own setup, available space on the workbench, so you'll have to figure this out on your own, but I will give you some useful information. First of all, the build quality on this unit. This is a very decently built microscope for the price, and it gets you everything that you need included in the package, well, minus the camera, which you don't really need, and you'll have to order separately. Because I own both a trinocular microscope and a digital microscope, I can tell you that I use both for slightly separate purposes. For example, I use my digital microscope whenever I do like a quick 1 or 2 minute inspection to find a defect, maybe a very small solder bridge, and then I just go to the soldering area and fix it without magnification. And then I use my trinocular microscope for longer soldering sessions for very small components, or 0402 and smaller, tiny repairs where you need to run like a very thin magnet wire, stuff like that, where you really appreciate the stereoscopic view, which gives you depth perception and much better image than a digital microscope will give you on a screen. But if you're in the market for a budget stereoscopic or trinocular microscope, and you have a working style that matches this type of microscope, then you should definitely shortlist this one, because it is very well made. It should work fine for hobby usage. It is decently priced, and it just overall it is a nice package. Check out the link for this in the description. That was all for today, and if you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to support me making more videos like this one, you can do it on my Patreon with as little as $1 per month. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you next time.